Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome in Coast to Coast to Coast for another very exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. If you're joining us for the first time, like quite a few of you are today, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And I'm so excited you're joining us today of all days because we are back live with our epic Peak Discovery series. So for years now, we have partnered with the amazing parks in Alberta and British Columbia as part of Parks Canada's Peak Discovery series. They showcase some of the most special places, not just in Canada, but the entire world. And for years, we've specifically featured the amazing folks at Waterton Lakes National Park. Now, you can check out their last broadcast with us on our YouTube channel. There's lots to explore and discover with them. But almost every time they do a program with us, they mention that they abut an amazing national park in the United States, Glacier National Park. Again, this whole region, sort of from the Yellowstone to Yukon, is one of the most special places on planet Earth. And so for the first time ever, very excited, we wanted to bring in friends on both sides of the border to talk about breaking down boundaries. How do these parks get along? Do bears need a passport? So much to discover together. So I'm so excited you're joining us today. And without further ado, I'm going to welcome in Brett Hutchinson from Waterton Lakes National Park and Ranger Lindsay from Glacier National Park. Brett, welcome to the broadcast. Lindsay, welcome to the broadcast. So nice to have you both here today.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Jesse.
Hey, Lindsay, how you doing? Hopefully.
My internet is suddenly being really bad, so I'm going to just try to switch internet and see if that helps. And I will be right back. I'm so sorry.
Take your time. This is the joy of bringing broadcasts from some of the coolest places in the world. Sometimes the internet just disagrees with us all, including mine. We had a blizzard last week. That led to some fun stuff. So Lindsay's going to sort that out. And Brett, if you want to lead us in with a little bit of an explanation about what's going on with the two parks, Lindsay should be back with us really, really shortly. And we can lead in and you can take us away if you want to get underway.
Totally. First off, I'll just introduce myself. Hello, bonjour, oki. My name's Brett Hutchinson, and I'm an interpreter here in Waterton Lakes National Park in Canada. And I'm honestly just brimming and shaking with excitement today. We get to do something for the first time in the history of the Peaks Discovery series. Me and my colleagues across the mountain parks have gotten to present with some really cool folks over the years, from scientists to safety technicians, from a humanoid bears to just magic fish. We've had a ton of guests, and that's why I'm so excited today that Ranger Lindsay gets to join us today. She's our neighbor. She's a collaborator. She's a friend of ours. So to get her internet back working, what I need from every classroom that is joined in today, I just need a big drum roll and round.
Drum roll. I think we got it. I think we got it. Lindsay.
I think so. Hello?
Yes,
can you hear me?
You guys made this happen. Thank you, kids from across Canada and the States.
Okay, well, what did I miss? Where are we at?
We missed nothing. We were just building you up. It's very exciting. And now we can dive in with our presentation, and there's so much to share. So, you know what? Let's lead in. I'm going to disappear and leave you two to it.
Right on.
Thank you.
Well, everybody. Yeah. So, everybody, let's introduce my Ranger counterpart, Ranger Lindsay.
Hi, I'm Lindsay, really glad to be here and excited to actually have my internet working somewhat. If it goes down again, I'll just switch it again. We'll see. But that is one of the perils of living and working in a rural national park, is the internet doesn't always quite work as you want it to. So thank you for your patience.
Yeah, okay. Lindsay, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and letting everybody know where you come from and what you do down there.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. And thanks everybody for joining us. It's really, really exciting to get to have you all here. My name is Lindsay. I'm an education ranger at Glacier National Park here in Montana in the United States. And as an education ranger, that means that my job is sharing this wonderful place with all of you, whether you are visiting virtually like today, or when you visit in person. So I do a lot of field trips with students that come to the park. We just finished up our snowshoe field trip season, doing lots of snowshoeing with students, which was really fun. And it's just a really great kind of thing to be able to learn about all this really awesome stuff and then share it with you. And so while kind of these two parks have individual names and are separated by the U.S.-Canadian border, we have a lot more in common than you might think. And together, we are Waterton Glacier International Peace Park.
And I want to say, if you're wondering why Lindsay is wearing a hat indoors today, it's because I kicked and begged and asked her that she bring it, because to me, that flat-brimmed hat just screams U.S. National Park Ranger, and it's just an international symbol of preserving these places. And I'm very much here for it today, so thank you so much for wearing that hat.
Oh yeah, it's a pretty cool hat. It's got just to show you, I don't know if you can see it too closely, but it's got sequoia cones along the brim. So yeah, very cool hat. And I don't know, it looks like I'm outside with my background here, so you know.
Before we get too deep into it, I do want to acknowledge that we are presenting today on the traditional territories of the Siksika-Sitapi, or the Blackfoot Confederacy, which consists of the Piikani, the Siksika, Amskapi Piikani, and the Kainai. Paktamaksikmi, or Waterton, falls within Treaty 7 territory, which includes the Tsuut'ina Nation, Stoney Nakoda, Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Goodstoney. The Ktunaxa Nation also have a connection to Paktamaksikmi, and members of Métis Nation Region 3 currently reside in the Paktamaksikmi area. The lands and waters of Paktamaksikmi have been used for millennia by Indigenous peoples for sustenance, ceremony, trade, and travel. And I would like to thank them today for their continuous stewardship and for sharing the land with us.
And yeah, here at Glacier, we're on the traditional homelands of the Amskapi Piikani, the Ktunaxa, the Salish, Pend d'Oreille, and Kalispel people as well.
So Waterton and Glacier share a very special relationship that dates way, way, way back into the late 1800s, when John George Kootenai Brown, this guy with a mustache on the screen, met up, who was Waterton's first park official. He met up with a man by the name of Henry Reynolds, who was a ranger from Glacier National Park. I couldn't find a photo of him, but this mountain is actually named after Henry Reynolds. That's Reynolds Peak, who was a ranger from Glacier National Park. And they thought, wow, we sure do share a lot of similar stuff. And they decided to start working together to take care of this wonderful area. Henry Reynolds has a great quote about Waterton and Glacier. What he says is, "The geology recognizes no boundaries, and as the lake lay, no man-made boundary could cleave these waters apart. And since that day, Waterton Lakes National Park and Glacier National Park have worked closely alongside one another, sharing knowledge, research, resources, and goodwill."
Yeah, so at first, the two parks were two separate parks. And Waterton, I believe, was actually established before us in 1895. And then Glacier National Park was established in 1910. And that was actually 6 years before the National Park Service was established. So here in the United States, the National Park Service, which is in charge of all of these national parks, making sure they're preserved for the future, it was created in 1916. So Glacier National Park was created before that. So even though we're not quite as old as Waterton, we are older than the U.S. National Park Service. And since then, we have worked to serve the Park Service's mission, which is to preserve unimpaired the natural and cultural resources and values of the national park system for the enjoyment, education, and inspiration of this and future generations. So what that means when we talk about cultural and natural resources, those are things like cultural resources, the history, the stories of these places and the people that have been here both now and for thousands of years, and natural resources as well, all of the animals, the plants, the water, the glaciers, all of these things. We want to make sure that we're preserving them and sharing the park, having people be able to learn about these places, both for people now, but also for people in the future to be able to enjoy and learn from. So Brett, what about Waterton? What was Waterton established to do?
Yeah, so we never actually started it as a national park. So when we were founded in 1895, we were established as what was called a Forest Dominion Preserve. And it wasn't until 1914 when we shed that title and formed Waterton Lakes National Park. as we know it today. And although our names have changed slightly over time, our goal of protecting and preserving the cultural and natural histories of this place for current and future generations has always remained constant.
Okay, so I guess Glacier has technically been a national park for about 4 years longer then, just, Oh man. Well, ever since then, ever since both of these areas were set aside to become national parks, we have had similar goals. And so in 1932, the United States and Canada jointly designated the two sites to create the world's first international peace park to commemorate the peace and the goodwill. What? First International Peace Park. Yes, the number one. Oh, that was the one. Yeah. To commemorate the peace and the goodwill that these two nations continue to share. And so today, we work together to preserve and share this connected landscape. And one thing that we talk a lot about here at Glacier National Park is water. So obviously, there's a lake right behind me. This is St. Mary Lake. But water also shaped the mountains here in the form of the Ice Age glaciers that carved through the rock and carved these mountains. And then in addition to that, Glacier National Park has a triple continental divide, which means that 3 big watersheds all connect right here, which is what you can see here in the photo that we're looking at. We have the green, the blue, the purple, these 3 big watersheds all kind of flow out. The water flows out from Glacier National Park and Waterton Lakes National Park into each of the oceans around North America. So there's a mountain here in Glacier called Triple Divide Peak where I have not actually been up there, but theoretically, if you were to pour your water bottle out on the top of that mountain, your water could go in 3 different directions to all different corners of the continent. So water connects us to so many places across North America, maybe even to you. And of course, to Waterton Lakes National Park. We even share a lake, which is Waterton Lake. And today we'll talk a little bit more about the things that connect us. Brett, I cannot hear you. I'm not sure if other people can. Ooh.
Being a little iffy, Brett. That's okay.
Hello.
Hello.
There we go.
Hello.
Can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, well, what I was saying, I'll just lean close. You guys get to see a up close and personal view of Brett today. That'll be a lot of fun for all the folks at home. So our waters and our mountains here, they form a landscape that we call the crown of the continent ecosystem. This doesn't mean that our ecosystems are a monarchy that rules over the entire continent with an iron fist. Have you ever heard the Shakespeare quote that reads, "Heavy is the head that wears the crown"?
I have.
I've heard that.
Yeah. Or for some of you who aren't necessarily into Shakespeare, a more modern interpretation could read, "With great power comes great responsibility," which was said by Uncle Ben in Spider-Man. Now, both these quotes essentially mean that there is a tremendous amount of responsibility that comes along with holding positions of power. Let's translate this to nature, though, because let's face it, in the natural world, everything shares equal importance. Because we are this crown of the continent ecosystem, we have an expansive connection across all North America through those watersheds that Lindsay spoke on. What happens in our parks can have trickle-down effects all along those watersheds. That means that how we choose to protect and preserve these 2 parks can directly impact everyone downstream of us. We hold a great amount of responsibility because our actions within these parks can have huge impacts far outside of our boundaries, which is why it is so important that we work together to protect this incredible space.
Exactly. Yeah, sometimes when I think about the crown of the continent, when you think about the mountains, I guess you could think about a hat too, of like, we have these mountains and it's like it's the crown of the continent, lots of responsibility. And I don't know, if you were to somehow look at the continent and see the mountains, maybe they'd even look like a crown from far away. I don't know, because they're pretty cool, tall mountains. But yeah, like Brett was saying, that means that the way that we steward the water and other resources here in the crown of the continent. So again, not just Glacier, and even not just Waterton and Glacier, but all of these areas around us as well. The way that we steward these resources has implications for everything in these environments, including animals. So if we kind of think about animals a little bit, in order to survive in their habitat, animals need, we usually think about 4 things. So they need 4 things, kind of general things that they need to survive. Take a moment to think about what those 4 things are. So what are the 4 things an animal needs to survive in their habitat? It's not just animals, but people too. So think about maybe the things that you need. So take a moment.
We're all taking a big drink here. That might be a hint. Oh, everyone's the only ever 3-person drink in the history of Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. So water, yes, coming through. Food, oh, we got options coming through, but you're going to tell us. So go for it.
Yeah, let's see. Now that, folks have had a chance to think, maybe got a little clue from that water break. What are some of those things that we need, Brett, and that animals need?
Well, we got people guessing water and food, so that's good. Now we're thinking of 2 more things. I want you to think of what we are inside right now. A building, maybe, a room, a house. We're thinking of shelter.
Yes.
Shelter is one of those 4 things. An animal needs a place it can sleep, whether that's a nest or a den. Shelter is important for all organisms. And last of all, if all organisms shared a very tight quarters, there wouldn't be enough food, water, or shelter to support them. Therefore, the 4th thing that we need is space.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, exactly. And same thing for you. Hopefully you have some space around you. You're not crowded by other people right now. You've had, breakfast, hopefully some water, a snack, all of that. And so, since these ecosystems of these parks are so connected, a lot of animals spend time on both sides of the border to find those things that they need: their food, water, shelter, and space. And so while we as people, we have to show a passport to cross the border between the US and Canada, animals don't have passports. Brett, I did think about photoshopping a passport onto this bear, but then I was like, well, no, they don't have passports. And I wasn't sure whether I do, Canadian or American. But either way, animals, they don't have passports. They don't care about, going through a specific area in order to cross the border. And so grizzly bears are one example. This is a grizzly bear here. And here in Glacier Waterton International Peace Park, we're lucky to have 2 kinds of bears, both black bears and grizzly bears. And grizzlies need a really large range to be able to find all of the food that they need to prepare for hibernation in the winter. So they have to, especially toward the end of the season, they have to be able to find a lot of food. And to find, again, all those things they need, they have to move around a lot and have a pretty big range. And biologists at Glacier have even worked in Waterton Lakes National Park with Parks Canada staff to put radio collars on grizzly bears. So radio collars, they don't hurt the bear, but it's something that is on the bear so the bear can move around and the biologist can track their movements and see where they go. And that's created a lot of really cool home range data, so showing how grizzly bears actually move between the parks. Because grizzlies have home ranges that span hundreds of miles. So Waterton by itself is too small to have its own grizzly population.
Yeah, well, Glacier ain't that big either.
Oh, you're a little quiet again, but yes, you're right. Glacier is not even by itself. Yeah, Glacier by itself is not super big either when you're a grizzly, to have a huge grizzly population.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead. Oh, now I can hear you.
Now you can hear me. That's why we need this crown of the continent that I've shown here. It's not just these 2 parks that are connected, those 2 right there. We are part of a larger network of connected lands that include provincial and state parks, national forests, and even some private land, all with the same goal of creating a connected corridor so that these animals can move freely throughout the landscape.
Yeah, exactly. So bears, they don't just stay in Glacier, they don't stay in Waterton. Yeah, they go into those national forests, provincial parks, tribal lands, other areas, hopefully not into people's backyards, as long as you're, securing your trash and all of that. But yeah, so it's not just grizzly bears that move throughout these ecosystems either. So speaking of animals that move across long distances, this is the harlequin duck. It is one of my favorite animals at Glacier National Park. And it's another example of an animal that travels internationally. So if you think about birds, you often think about birds migrating. So Brett, I'm going to ask you a question. Birds, usually, when you think about them migrating, where do they go? Which direction do they move?
South.
South? Okay, yeah. So south for the winter. Yeah, you think about them going south to find, their food, water, shelter space, all that, and then, coming back north in the summer. Harlequins actually go to the west for the winter. So they will spend the summer, they have their nests in rushing streams here in the mountains at Glacier, other places as well. And then they will actually migrate to the west out to the coast in the winter. They really if you see them, they kind of like surf on the water. It's pretty cool. And they can do that, on the coast in the ocean. And then they come east, back to the mountains for the summer. So as you can see, this map, a lot of the harlequins in Montana migrate to Canada in the winter. So if you look at the orange lines here in the picture, the Montana population, the blue lines, the Wyoming population, those ducks are going across the border, going to the US in the summer and then up to the coast of Canada in the winter. And so some of them also spend time in both Glacier and Waterton. And biologists who study these ducks, because they're pretty cool, they only come back and they have to return to their natal streams where they were born in order to have their nests. They won't do it anywhere else. So they're really important, ones to protect their habitat, because they, have to come back to those same streams. So biologists that study these harlequins also work together. Glacier National Park biologist Lisa Bate worked with Cindy Smith, who's the retired conservation biologist at Waterton Lakes, to figure out the best way to use radio tracking to find harlequin duck nests, so that park biologists here in both these parks could study them to learn more about where do they go and how they're doing. And we're still studying harlequin ducks today. And Brett, now I'm just imagining it's a lot harder with them than the bears. You can't just put a giant radio collar on a duck. I think that would be hard for it to fly that way. But anyway, I guess, Brett, how else do some of these two parks work together to keep these ecosystems healthy? And we can't hear you again. Go closely, talk loud. Maybe
smack the computer. I find that's very emotionally satisfying, even when it doesn't technically work.
Hello.
Oh, there we go.
Yay. Well, on your point, Lindsay, I think the fact that there is no physical boundary between our two parks is huge. Fish can swim up and down the lake. Birds can fly wherever they can. But if there was a fence on the border, a lot of land mammals wouldn't be able to travel freely between our two spaces. This may seem small, but it means way more than you may believe. So let's go back in time to 2017. In Waterton, we had a major wildfire called the Keno wildfire, and it ravaged the landscape in Waterton. And although the fire never crossed the border into Glacier, many of the mammals that lived here sought refuge in Glacier National Park, where the fire did not touch. Now, the photo that I have here is a trail camera of a deer just a few days after the fire, returning back to Waterton. Now, these animals, they knew that the coast was clear, and they found some time in Glacier, a little vacation down there. Once the coast was clear, they knew that they were able to return back home. If there were physical boundaries in the way, some of these mammals might not have been able to transfer between these two parks as freely, and could have been much more devastating than it was.
Yeah, I know I've been at the boundary, or, been on a boat going past the boundary, and it just looks like they have an area where they cut down the trees and all of that, so you can see where the border is, but it's, just kind of an open space there. So yeah, if you're a deer, you just gotta, wander across that.
Yeah, and it's not just animals who move between parks. People do too. So visitors today can even take a boat from Waterton into Glacier. Not today because the lake is frozen, but theoretically you
And
could. And even in the summer, though, you can join a Parks Canada interpreter and a glacier ranger on a guided hike where you cross the border and you learn all about the Peace Park. Shameless self plug. Please come to the park and take part in these programs.
Oh yeah, Brett. I've heard that you are a part of those. Yeah, and then the one in the picture there, that ranger, his name is Frank, and he's pretty cool. Or in the previous picture, his name is Frank, and he's one of the national park rangers from the U.S. who does those hikes as well. But yeah, don't forget that, not just people today, but this place has been important to people since long before either park was established. So there's many different Indigenous groups that have maintained long-standing connections with the land that today makes up Waterton Glacier. Two of those are the Kootenai or the Kootenai and the Siksikaitsitapi or the Blackfoot Confederacy. And their traditional territories span both sides of what's now the border between the US and Canada. And to this day, members of these groups live in both the US and Canada. And the way that the Peace Park is managed has negatively impacted their ability to access and utilize these areas in the ways that their ancestors did. And so today, we're working to find better ways to steward these places, not just as a peace park, but also in partnership with the tribes who have done so since time immemorial. And you can learn more about these connections if you visit Glacier by coming to a Native America Speaks program. That's what this photo is of, where members of the Blackfeet Nation and the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes share personal knowledge of their history and culture and their connections to this place.
Sorry, Brett, we got your audio again, buddy. Sorry. We're gonna
Hello.
Get you there you go. Perfect.
I think I just need to wait like a few seconds before I speak to let my computer think for a second.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
That's why I will live in nature, because technology doesn't work well for me. Anyways, the same goes for Waterton. Although our park was formed in the late 1800s, human presence on this land dates back over 10,000 years. At the beginning of this program, I did a land acknowledgement that outlined all the groups that have a connection with Waterton. You may remember me referring to Waterton as Buktamaksikami, which is the Blackfoot word for this place, and it roughly translates to the inner sacred lake. Like Glacier, we recognize that our management of this land has negatively affected these groups. Access and use of their traditional lands. We have a commitment to reconcile. And again, much like Glacier, one way of doing this is by creating a space for Indigenous-led programming in our park, such as, photoed here, our Blackfoot Crafts and Stories program that will run through the summer. I highly recommend that if you are in either Glacier or Waterton or any national park, to seek out Indigenous-led programming, to learn about the traditional uses of these lands and how the people who lived here, and all about the people who lived here pre-colonization.
And still live in these areas today.
Yeah. So Waterton and Glacier, we work together in many ways, from shared programming such as the ones that we just spoke on, to managing and monitoring species at risk like the grizzly bear and the harlequin duck, to more logistical efforts that you might not see up front and central. Now, we want to talk about wildfires again. If a wildfire were to start in either of our parks, whose responsibility is it to manage the fire? If a fire starts in Waterton, should Waterton manage it? Or if a fire starts in Glacier, should Glacier manage it? What do you think?
I'm wondering, I don't know what folks are saying in the folks who are watching are saying, but I think, Jesse, any input from folks?
Both. We've confused everybody, I think. I don't even know. I genuinely. So I think if it starts in one, you tell the other, and you all get together and make it all happen. This is my thought.
I mean, yeah, I was going to say both because, it could affect us. Like you were saying, that one wildfire that stayed in Waterton, but they could easily cross over into Glacier if one started in Waterton as well.
That's right, guys.
Oh, and you're quiet again.
Hello.
It's like when we talk, it turns off your
I think it is.
microphone.
The computer hates you. I think.
Hello?
There we go.
Now we can hear you again.
There we go. That's right, guys. It is both of our responsibilities. Fires are unpredictable, much like my computer. And what can start in one of our parks can very well move into another. So working together is key. In 2018, the year after Kenow wildfire, another fire started, which we call the Boundary Fire, because it literally started on the border. Now, we worked together to manage that fire, and luckily no people or infrastructure was harmed. It was a huge win for both of our parks.
And that's one thing, Brett, just before you go on, just one thing that I think is so interesting that some folks who are visiting from far away might not realize is that fire is something we need to manage fire, but it's also a natural part of these ecosystems in a lot of ways. And today, fire can be, because it's been managed so much for a long time, or, oftentimes fire was suppressed. Fires today are often a lot worse. Also, if we don't have as much water later in the season as usual from snow melt, but fire can be, a natural part of these ecosystems. So anyway, it's all about working together to manage that and make sure that, we're taking care of these landscapes and letting them, exist naturally, but also making sure that we can stop, broader damage and stuff like that from happening. Anyway.
One, two.
Is your microphone
You're good.
We just got to count down.
Gotta count down.
Exactly.
So, since the late 1800s, Waterton and Glacier have been neighbors. Through that time, we have grown from neighbors to colleagues, and from colleagues to close friends. We need one another to provide this incredible landscape with the protection and preservation it deserves. It is critical for Waterton Glacier to be connected, because no matter what lines we draw on a map, this landscape will always remain connected. The geology recognizes no boundaries, and as the lake lay, no man-made boundary could cleave these waters apart.
Exactly. And it's not just Glacier and Waterton that are connected. While you may not be in the crown of the continent ecosystem, you might be connected to us too. The water melting off the mountains right now as we get into spring is flowing out to many corners of the continent. And so I would encourage you to look up where your water comes from. So maybe it originates here in the crown of the continent and Waterton Glacier International Peace Park.
Very, very cool. Oh,
And no, that's all, folks.
fantastic. Well, I want to come to both parks. I think I'm going to have to make my way and join one of those guided hikes, you two. Thank you both so much. What a special program. We've already got a bevy of questions and about 10 minutes. So we'll dive in. And some of you covered a little bit, but if you could highlight a little more for us, that would be awesome. One is, so there's a special guided hike, obviously, to cross the border. But can people that are in one park swim across the lake to the other border or just go walking by themselves, or is that a no-no? I want to cover that for our audience that might join you both.
Oh no, we can't hear you, Brett. You got to do the countdown.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Now we got you.
You do need to. You can't just cross freely. There is an app that you can download called the Roam app, and basically you plug in your passport information, say where you're crossing the border, how you're getting there, whether by foot, by swimming, by boat, and you do just need to check in. We can't just have people walking willy-nilly across the border.
Yes, we've got the biggest border together in the entire world, but as you'll know, if you've ever crossed an actual border crossing, there is a little bit of a system to it, even though we're close friends. So make sure if you're at one of the parks and you want to go to the other, you talk to someone and figure that all out in advance. That's a great question.
Yeah. We're not grizzly bears or deer going across. But yeah, I've known folks that have gone on a hike from Logan Pass at Glacier National Park, did this super, super long hike all in a day, which was wild. I think it was like 30 miles to get to Goat Haunt, which is the on the U.S. side of Waterton Lake. I know this isn't Waterton Lake. I'm like pointing at it. But anyway, the U.S. side of Waterton Lake. And then they had to get there in time for the last boat over to Waterton, where they had somebody else who'd, cross the border in a car. And they, of course, had to, check in on the app so that they could come back to the U.S. And it sounded like a very long day. And I think I'd be stressed trying to get to the boat. But
Very long day.
It sounded pretty cool.
I like the goat hunt as the final destination. It's very in Alberta, BC, Manitoba, Saskatchewan. There's some of the most fantastically named places in Canada, and so I'm glad that there's parallel by their counterparts on the U.S. side. You talked about tracking some of the animals, so putting collars on. Can you tell us a little bit about if there are other kinds of devices? Just share a little bit more about how we do that. Lindsay, you can lead off with this one. If there's anything specifically we put on our animals that are going across borders.
Yeah, and I also just wanted to go, you mentioned goat hunt, so I wanted to bring up a picture of a mountain goat for a moment. So this is a mountain goat that is climbing up. They've got really specialized hooves to be able to climb up on the rocks. Yeah, so tracking, I don't know, exactly the details. That was one thing we were thinking about. Maybe we could do, a program even just on bears and looking at some of that mapping and stuff. But so for example, for bears, there are these GPS collars that basically are a way that, they can kind of, or radio as well. You can pick up like the radio signal, see where it's going, and then see like a map of where that bear has gone. And those collars are often sometimes they're meant to fall off after a certain period of time. And then they have a signal so that biologists can go find the collar, so that the bear doesn't just like have that collar on it forever. And in terms of like collaring the bears, usually the scientists will kind of, they have like a bear trap, but it's not something that'll harm the bear, so that they can, have the bear, go to sleep for a little while, put the collar on, make some measurements, stuff like that before releasing it back out into the wild. And those are like the technology of those has been advancing really far. So it's like a lot, easier for the bear to like move around, go about its daily life, but just with kind of a necklace on, I'd say. Brett, anything to add to that? Oh no, wait.
No.
Now it's okay.
I think it's not even a countdown. It actually requires Lindsay and I to tell you something's wrong, and that makes it work, I think, is the magic of it.
I love it.
Yes.
Oh,
I love it. You just got to criticize me and then we can go ahead. No, I just want to add like some smaller animals we do track as well. So birds will put little bands around their feet, and we can just basically when they land, we see if they're banded and we can track them that way. It's not as technology advanced as the bear collars, but it's another way. And even with fish, sometimes we can even like implant something in fish where if they go through certain magnetic channels and stuff, we can track fish migration as well. There's a lot of really cool science out there about tracking these animals.
Cool. We did a butterfly program recently where they're putting little things on monarchs, which is wild to me that you can design something that's that small. So if you guys need any like connections to the cool science groups, you just let us know and we'll put you in touch.
So wild how much that technology has been advancing.
Really?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
When you kids these days get to grow up in an era where like, oh, this is like, oh yeah, of course that happened. Like when we were kids, this was not the case. Like it's like unbelievable magic now what we're able to do. So great query, guys. All right, time flies and you're having fun. We're going to do 2 more questions together before we wrap up and say farewell. Miss Agrell Smith's class wants to know, how did the fire in 2017 start and how did you stop it from going too far into the park?
Hello, tell me something.
You're good. Yeah.
You're a little quiet, yeah, but I can still hear you. You're a little quieter.
Okay.
Yeah. There we go.
So the fire in 2017, it started pretty remote. It actually, believe it or not, started in British Columbia. So not even in Montana, not even in Waterton, not even in Glacier. It started by a lightning strike on a peak of a mountain called Keno Mountain. And over the course of around 2 weeks, weather changed and it just really took hold. It burnt around over 60% of the trees in Waterton Lakes National Park. And I don't believe it was actually put out until around early October. So it started end of August, and it took over a month to actually get that whole thing put out.
Wow, very cool. There you go. Thanks, guys. And then Mr. Agrell Smith, great question. we're going to wrap up with one of my favorite questions for you both. And it's so nice to get to ask this of a U.S. National Park Ranger too. Lindsay, so you can begin. What's your favorite part of your job as a ranger? Like what gets you up in the morning? And then Brett, you get to answer next.
Oh my gosh. So I think one of my favorite things about my job is the fact that I get to learn about all of this cool stuff and then share it with other people. So I know when I was in school, I just thought all of these different things were so interesting. And I was like, oh, geology and biology and history and all of these things. Oh my gosh, I want to learn all this stuff. And I couldn't decide, what I wanted to major in or what I wanted to do. And I realized that being a park ranger, I get to learn about all of that and have it be my job to tell people about the cool stuff I learned. So I think just generally that is really cool. And in general, when I have students visit the park on field trips or even virtually, it's really exciting to see people find something that they're really excited about so that they can then carry that excitement forward and learn about it in the future. So if you heard something today that you were like, oh, that's super cool, I'd really encourage you to learn more and follow that passion for learning about that. And you never know where it'll take you.
What a fantastic answer, Lindsay. Jeez. Brett, tough act to follow. I've seen some similar reasons. And you know what? We'll just start by saying your computer's failing. And now it'll work.
Maybe.
Hello?
Hello.
Oh, a little bit. Just quiet. Yeah. Oh no, get closer.
Right here.
We're right here. We can hear you now.
Seeing all like the imperfections in my face and every classroom up on a big screen. That's great. Ooh. I want to say my favorite thing about my job that I get to do is getting to work with the wonderful people I get to work with. I've been collaborating with Jesse on these programs for years now. I've gotten to work with Lindsay here in the United States. I get to work with people across all the national parks in Canada and even just the people within Waterton here. I get to work and connect with an amazing group of individuals across North America. And it's really shown me throughout my career that getting to work with other people, connecting with people and working together is one of the best ways that we can create and preserve these spaces. And I just really want to harp on the fact that being connected and working together, we can do so much more. And getting to connect with Lindsay, getting to connect with Jesse, it's just been such a pleasure of my career.
Yeah. Geez, thanks you two. We need to bring you on more often at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. I will say, honestly, flattery aside, we as an organization, we've never run across more passionate and dedicated people than people at parks. And so I hope for all our students, you get the chance to go to a national park in Canada or the US or both this year. It changes your life. I've had the chance to visit many national parks in both countries, some of the most special experiences I've ever had, both myself, with family, with friends. And so they're really, really special places in the world. I hope you take the chance to appreciate them. And I want to say a huge thank you to all of you for joining today to learn a little bit about a really, really special place in Waterton and Glacier, International Peace Park. Go and join the border tour, cross over, and get to say hi to both countries. And what we'll do to wrap up, as we always do, is we'll say just a big farewell. Brett, Lindsay, thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye for now, everyone. Thank you so much.